So maybe we will hold off for 1 minute and we will get started at 3:03 Eastern. While people get settled.
What time Pacific, Todd? Do you might want to clarify?
There's something weird about Arizona time. I'm not. It could be like 5 in the afternoon, Arizona. I don't understand.
I think it's 3:15 there.
Yeah.
You did say you were going to spend these 2 minutes serenading us, right?
Yeah. Oh shoot! But time's up. So everyone, for now, thank you. Thank you for joining. My name is Todd Rogers. I am the faculty director of the Behavioral Insights Group, and this is an event put on by the Harvard Behavioral Insights Group, of which Maya Nixick is the program director, and Alison Brooks and Mike Norton are our hosts, and our guest is Ayelet Fishback. So Alison is a professor, an associate professor at the Harvard Business School, and I have the full title, which I'm going to read off.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, it is the O'Brien. Oh, it's not that complicated. O'Brien Associate Professor of Business Administration. And Michael I. Norton is the Harold M. Brearley Professor of Business Administration, both at the Harvard Business School. They're both faculty affiliates of the Behavioral Insights Group. And I'm going to pass it off to them to introduce Ayelet, who I am very grateful is able to join us today. Love her book. You will all learn a lot more about. This almost looks like it's intentionally blurring and making you look like you're not supposed to. Called Get It Done. Which you will learn a lot more about, and you should all buy and share with family members for birthdays, graduations, holidays. And the next event that the Behavioral Insights Group is doing is a similar book panel with Zoe Chance on Monday, June
13th. More to come on that, yes.
And sign up for the Behavioral Insights Group. We will send, if you would like to learn about more events like this and other behavioral science events at Harvard and beyond, Maya will send out the relevant information over the chat. With that, thank you again, Ayelet, and I'm going to pass to Alison and Mike.
Awesome. Thanks, Todd. And thanks, Maya. Thanks for having us. Hi, everybody. My name's Alison. We're so, sincerely, Mike and I are not doing this because we have to. We are doing this because we are uber duper super fans of Ayelet Fishback, who is the world's expert on motivation, the psychology of motivation, and one of our favorite researchers in the world. And it was really such a privilege to read your book, Ayelet. Thank you for writing it, and thank you for letting us learn from you. Let's start with, just for the folks in the crowd who might be watching who haven't read the book yet, I would love to ask you just to give a 5-sentence overview. What's this book about?
And/or why'd you write it? What
Yeah.
prompted you to kind of pull it all together?
So 5 sentences. When I tell my students to say something in 1 sentence, I say that means 1 period, but they can use as many commas as they want.
Perfect.
So, right? So you might not ever get to the period. But hi, thanks for having me. I'm Ayelet. I have been doing research in motivation for a really long time, and this field has been exploding in the years that I've been doing it. So between social psychology and decision making and behavioral economics, everybody has been studying motivation. I felt like the crowded room filled with treasure is impossible to keep in my head anymore. And so the original goal was just to put things in order. Then what I realized is that if you look at the studies, if you look at the interventions that we as a field developed, they nicely create a framework. And basically there are things that we do to help people and ourselves to set better goals. There are ways that we better monitor progress, learn from feedback. So this is the second bucket. There are interventions that we use to manage our multiple goals. And this is the third bucket of interventions. And then the last one is social support. There are things that we do in order to get people to help us with our goals and in order to pursue goals with others. And once I realized that there are these 4 buckets and it's a framework and I can actually organize what's going on in the field, I thought, wow, I discovered something about the work that I've been doing, and maybe that's a good enough reason to share it with the world. Hence the book.
You did it. Dare I say you got it done?
I got it done. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm so embarrassed. I'm embarrassed that I did that.
No, not at all. And you know, like deciding on a title for a book is not an easy one. So I got that done too.
So we're
By the
gonna
way, even though we're going to focus on motivation and Ayelet's book, I have to say, like, if you look at what Ayelet, she's one of those people who's an expert in like 9 different things, which is extremely rare. Like there's probably like 2 in the world. And among the other things that she's worked on, and this is like in the last year or week or something like that, is eating off the same plate brings people closer together. When we choose after somebody else, we diversify because we want all of us to have a more interesting experience. She studies like personal growth and how approaching discomfort can help us grow. I'm going to stop in a second because I could go on forever. She looks at how loneliness makes us prefer used products, like there's a friend hidden in the product for us. And then a paper that I really, really love, a recent one on how food restriction leads people to be socially isolated, because if you have an allergy, you can't be around people. And that's like, and I'm not exaggerating, in the last 6 months or a year. So just like an astonishing level of creativity and generativity across every single domain of life, in addition to doing enough research to write a book on this one topic. So totally extraordinary.
Totally extraordinary. We're going to
Yeah.
start with we have questions for you, Ayelet, about the book itself, and then we will indulge Mike's enthusiasm and dive into some questions that are sort of not specifically from the book, but from some of your other work as well. Mike, you want to dive in first? We have questions, probably too many to talk about, so I'm gonna let Mike pick first.
I was just going to keep listing projects. I thought that would be fun for everyone if I just carry on.
It's fun for me, so you know, keep going.
I think when Alison and I were chatting, one of the things that we were thinking about is like something that I think everybody struggles with, which is how do you pick the goal? Like, I think there's so much useful advice in the book on, now that I have the goal, what should I do? Like all the things that I can do, but how do you, maybe I can ask, how do you pick your goals? But like, how do we, you know, I know it has to be, once we have the goal, we can think like how concrete, how abstract, all these useful things. But how do you think about people coming up with a goal? Because like I could have a goal today to grow a beard or, you know, write a book or whatever else it might be. So how do we think about picking?
Yeah, well, you know, and there is a question of how you choose a goal and how do you make sure that it's not the wrong goal for you. And one of the challenges in writing the book was that so many of the studies are about weight loss. But I personally think that this is usually not a good goal, or that for many of us, this is not a goal that I would like to advocate. So I would just challenge how to write about motivation without using that goal that often comes to mind, which is to lose weight. Very unhealthy goal for many of us. I also started the book with a story of the people that tried to get to the summit of Mount Everest and were so eager and so motivated, and getting to the top of Mount Everest is such a wonderful goal. It's specific, that there is a clear target. There are great incentives. It's intrinsically motivated. It has everything, but they decided to do it on a bad weather day, and some of them paid with their lives. So clearly the wrong goal, and indeed that. the journey starts with deciding what's healthy for you, what fits with everything else that you are set to do, what is possible, what fits your interest, what is new, right? What is exciting. We were joking before everybody joined the call that academics tend to choose goals just because we didn't do it before, okay? So, we never studied that thing. Let's do it. And so you're curious. You develop. You want to get somewhere. So just a few things of what leads you to choose a goal, and how should you be careful with making this choice. And one more thing that I would say about it is that it's perfectly fine to drop your goals. So it's not just about choosing goals, it's also about giving up on some that don't work anymore, or that maybe were a good idea in the first place. Subtraction is also important.
Let me be a little more clear. What I was asking was, could you give me some goals? Maybe I was,
Yeah.
I'm lost. Anything? Yeah,
Yeah,
weight loss. Let's go with weight loss. Allison.
Sorry, what did you suggest?
I suggested weight loss just because you said.
Weight loss. Yeah, so here's why you should not go for weight loss. Well, it's an avoidance goal. They don't work very well. Okay, it's like asking people not to think about your ex when you're on a diet. The only thing that you can think of is food for many of us. It's a goal that leads you often to not like yourself. Which is not a great idea. It's also a goal that many of the people that adopt it actually have a healthy weight, and what they need to work on is their self-esteem. So, Mike, don't try to lose weight. But how about a goal of visiting Chicago, and can work on something together?
That's
works for you.
Goal.
Yeah,
can I just stop now? Can I just hang up now, because I just learned I don't have to lose weight ever, and I can go to a project with Ayelet. I'm out. Hey, you've all been great.
You do need to eat healthy food though.
Oh, see, I should have hung up.
Yeah, and exercise, everything else, yeah, still counts.
Ayelet, there's something that you touched on that I know that Mike and I have been kind of obsessed with, is this idea of psychological richness, that for a long time, scholars who think about well-being have thought about it as two prongs. One is about sort of hedonic happiness, pleasure, like how do we feel? And the other pillar being about meaning. So like, to what extent do we feel like we're serving others? But recently, this amazing work by Shigehiro Oishi and Aaron Westgate has identified this potential like third pillar of well-being, which is they call psychological richness, which is the idea that you can be happy and be like working or serving the needs of others and still your life is boring. So we also need that feeling of richness that's like new experiences, exciting experiences, things that sort of spark and ping in your brain that make you feel excited. Anyway, just thinking of just that new sort of third arm of well-being has changed the way that I've started to think about motivation, because it's like, what are you really aiming for? You could be aiming for the wrong things, even broadly. And in the book, you talk about this a lot. Like when you think about superordinate goals, sub goals, sub goals, and then sort of like the means to achieve all of the above. I don't really know where I'm going with this. Just like, what if we have the wrong superordinate goals? What if we thought it was happiness and meaning, serving the needs of others? But wait, there's a third thing. And now that there's this cool research on it, that big thing is now an emergent new thing we hadn't been thinking of before, that we couldn't have known a priori. Like how should we, like how nimble should we be in our pursuit of all of this like whole goal system, and how much should we be open to it changing over time?
Yeah, I don't think that seeking happiness or psychological richness are great goals. Okay, they are no, well, they are great, like the general life objectives, but they are not good goals because it's unclear how to do it. And presumably you want your goal to be sufficiently abstract so that it is motivating. Okay? You want your goal to be about having a job rather than writing applications, or pursuing a relationship rather than signing up to a dating website. But if you go so abstract so that your goal is to have a psychologically rich life or be happy, it's often unclear how you do that. Okay? So you became so abstract so that the goal is no longer connected to any action, to any how. Okay, and so when people say, I want to be happy, well, what does that mean? What do you do tomorrow morning to be happy? Like, if you know, great, and that's the right goal for you. But if not, then that's just not the right goal. What I take from the really great new area of research on psychological richness is thinking more carefully on what is intrinsically motivating. And we often think about what is intrinsically motivating as fun, okay? as pleasurable, as at the moment giving the hedonic, pleasant experience. But then we know that sometimes people are intrinsically motivated. That is, they get some immediate benefits. They are very engaged with an activity that is hard, but that might be meaningful, that might be more important for them in ways that cannot be quite captured as fun. Okay, I was talking to an ER doctor that said that their job is like the best in the world, and you wonder like how can someone say that? Like, you work in the ER, like people die there, like it sounds hard to me. But it was so meaningful in the rich kind of meaning for that person who is very intrinsically motivating in what she does.
Love it. Okay, so there's two things in here that we want to unpack. One is about abstractness and concreteness. And the other, I think, is we have other questions about intrinsic motivation, which we're going to like save for a second, because in the book you use this amazing phrase called optimally abstract, which I love, about what great goals are, right? You want it to be aspirational, but not so abstract as like what I was just describing, like I want to be happy, or I want richness, or I want meaning. You want it to be slightly more concrete than that, so it's more feasible. You know what to do to get there. But I want to push back a little bit. I think you like this. Maybe I'm a weird outlier, but I love super concrete goals, like so concrete and tiny that it feels like maybe they're not even goals at all, but they're behaviors. Like I remember this day, actually, Mike and I were co-teaching a seminar filled with undergrads, and everybody went around the table and said, like, what do you hope to achieve? Even just like in this session, what do you hope to achieve? And the students all had sort of stuff that was all over the map, but it got to me and Mike was like, I just want to laugh. That's it, just want to laugh. And it made me reflect like that's very concrete. It's really, and it feels achievable. But where do we draw the line between a behavior and a goal, I guess? And do people like, maybe Mike, but definitely me, who love these concrete little tiny goals and like crossing them off their to-do list because it feels so good? Do we lose sight of some bigger picture stuff because we're so fixated on getting the little things done?
Okay. So I can answer the question that wanting to laugh is not a concrete goal. It's actually very abstract. I think it reflects the desire that the seminar will have new ideas, that it will be creative, that I'll hear these ideas that are going to make me smile, because I never thought about organizing the world in this way. I never thought about knowledge in this way. So I would just say that this is a pretty abstract goal. But we have many people advise us to have the to-do list and to monitor our progress with like keeping this whiteboard that has everything that we need to accomplish this month, which, by the way, I do not have in my office. think that having these specific to-do lists are good for monitoring progress. So in particular for people that are unsure that they can do something, maybe that there is no sufficient experience in the task, or like confidence, or maybe you are starting on something new and you don't really know how that will go. Then the little steps that allow you to monitor progress, and then to-do list is good. Also for people that suffer from procrastination on, not in the way that we joke about being like procrastinators, that really have a problem, then often the clinician advice is, set a goal such as doing the dishes, so that you just get out of bed and do the dishes. But for many of us, the problem with these concrete to-do lists is that we lose sight on what we want to do. We all have many goals that we want to achieve. They often conflict with each other. If you just go over your to-do list by order, Alison, which I don't think you do, you will never finish answering your email, right? And so you never get to write a book because you are busy with everything that needs to happen before you meet with Mike and you have a discussion about ideas. And we need to allow these overarching goals to guide us, because otherwise we are caught in the details. We don't really see the forest. We are in the trees. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
It's so interesting because I just listened to your back and forth just then, I would have laughing, and Alison, you sort of said in your question, what's a goal and what's a behavior? Laughing is super concrete. You know what I mean? I can tell if I'm laughing or not. Yeah. So it's it's specific and yet completely vague at the same time. You know, and I hadn't really thought of it that way. Until
I think it gets from Ayelet's stuff, because as a behavior, it's concrete, it's measurable, and
but
it's so multiply determined, I think, is part of it. And Ayelet gets into this in the book of what the differences between when there are so many different means to a certain end versus one means to many different ends, one means to one end. These are very different psychological and behavioral experiences. They had really good names too, equifinal and multifinality.
I can, so basically we talk about multifinal means, which is feeding two birds with one stone. If you don't like killing birds, multifinal means are basically means that allow you to achieve more than one goal. Okay, so you might bring your lunch from home, which means that it's healthier, it's cheaper, it saves you time. You just achieve a bunch of things with the same means. These means are good because they are efficient. They allow us to achieve many goals. On the downside, we see that the connection, the mental association between the means and the goal becomes diluted. And so often people prefer means that achieve fewer goals because they feel like this activity really, or this product really serves that goal. And I'm being reminded of Itamar Simonson's old study showing that people that don't keep kosher try to avoid buying kosher ice cream, right? Because, an ice cream that is both tasty and kosher seems like it's probably not very tasty. Then the other configuration, Alison, that you mentioned is equifinal means. This is the all roads lead to Rome configuration, where you have many ways of doing something. I can exercise by running, biking, or swimming. And that is in particular useful for novices that are unsure whether there's a way. You just highlight all the different ways in which one can achieve a goal.
The many means to achieve a goal, I found that part of the book very intriguing. When we teach negotiation, we teach that the greatest source of power in a negotiation is about having a strong outside option, right? Having a strong BATNA, best alternative to a negotiated agreement. And in a way, goals are the same way, that if there are many means to achieve a goal, even if like a few of them flop, you feel more confident because you know that there are other pathways that you could fall back on to, like, you're not going to fail overall if a couple of the means don't work out so well. I found that very intriguing.
Do people pick the easy ones? Like if there's 10
Mm.
ways to get to a goal, and like if I wanted to be more generous, I could give all my money away, or I could I don't know, answer an email for Allison or something like that. And would I be like, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to answer one email and then I'll feel, is there a risk ever that we kind of pick off the low hanging fruit and then don't go further up the chain?
Yes, so absolutely, right? So when there are different ways, then people are going to gravitate toward the easy way. And then there is all the literature on licensing and on feeling depleted, right? You might answer this one email to Alison and feel licensed to not give your money to charity. Or my example is that when I go to the gym, I try to find a parking spot that is the closest to the door, right? Because I don't want to accidentally walk another 20 feet. After all, I'm going to exercise. I need to like reserve my energy or something, which not quite normative, but we see that people are doing these like acts of balancing all the time.
Ayelet, in the book, I'm going to take a little bit of a jag here. Some of them, by the end of the book, we get to a point where, the first part of it is a lot about intrapsychic or intrapersonal goals, what's going on in your own head, how can we influence ourselves to do what we need to do to achieve our goals in life. But then we sort of shift into interpersonal land and how these goal systems interact with other people's goal systems. And there's a quote in the book that says, to get support, you need to be supportive. And I think Mike and I think about that a lot in terms of our research, but also in our own lives. Why do you think it's hard for all of us to put this into practice, or to think about, how should we think about this in a way that's, how do we balance these sort of relational goal system dynamics versus self-serving goal dynamics?
Lots of questions here. Well, let me see. First, we pursue goals with other people. So often, like, this is a group goal. This is a shared goal. Okay, we do it together. Other times they are helping our goals, and so they are instrumental. They are instrumental because they might give us the resources, they might give us the stage, they might pay for us to go to school. They are also helpful because they will take care of our kids when we teach in the evening, and because they will listen to us complaining about all the difficulties that we have at work. Okay, so they are instrumental to us. And what we find, which is not surprising if you are an experimental psychologist, is that people are somewhat egocentric in their perception. So I'm aware of how much others need to support me more than I think about how I can be instrumental for them, how I can facilitate their goals, which is basically it's perspective taking. It's my point of view. Okay, I see what I need, and I look at the world and thinking, how can you help me with that? What I think is interesting is that we often think that we know other people more than they know us, and yet we care more about them knowing us than we knowing them. Okay, in our relationship, we want to feel known and therefore supported more than we care to provide support and to help others. So I just threw a lot of information at you. Did that make sense?
No, it's awesome. Totally. I think a lot about this in the context of, one context that feels really glaringly important is networking. I've always had this sort of lay belief that people think about networking completely the wrong way, that our instincts tell us that it's like this thing where we need to think about who the high power people to connect with. And then once I'm talking to them, what do I say that's going to dazzle them? When in fact, like, and I think our colleague Kathleen Voss, who's an amazing psychologist too, is like, you know what, the best thing you can do to be like a good networker is just like do things. It's not about who you're connecting with or what you're saying to them, but like do interesting things. And those things might actually be helpful to other people. And then they are going to want to connect with you. And that's always stuck with me, rather than thinking about like, what can I get from other people and how do I like dazzle them? It's thinking, what do they need and how can I serve that need for them? And for whatever reason, that feels like a very counterintuitive.
Can I add? Can I just add to this that it's often like what matters is not so much what you can say that will impress them, but how much you can listen and be impressed with what they have to say.
Yes.
I always wanted to do a project on that. People believe with networking that it's linear, that the longer they spend with the person, the better it is. So that like, not only did I talk to them at the cocktail hour, but then I sat next to them at dinner, and then I got in an Uber with them also. And so I had 4 hours with that person. And of course, the person completely hates them by that point. I always wanted to see like, what's the optimal minutes before you bail? And the person's like, that was a nice interaction. It's probably like 2. Alison, you might know.
I'm going to dodge this because this is not about my book party, guys. It's about Ayelet's. And so here's my follow-up question. And I think it's related to this, like how much time is too much time. You have so much amazing work and you really delve into it amazingly in the book, Ayelet, about patience. Like, so, and I think almost an implicit assumption in the book and a lot of the evidence you provide in the book is that patience is good and necessary for us to achieve our goals. And a lot of the times when we fail in our goal pursuit, it's because we're impulsive or lack self-control or abandon our goals. But I wanted to push back on this a little bit about when is patience most important? So when are there times when patience is bad and the opposite, impulsivity, is good? Have you thought about that?
Yes, and philosophically, certainly so, right? So if you take the perspective of like, let's push it to the extreme. Let's say that you never do what is good now because you're waiting for something better in the future, then that would be the wrong thing to do because eventually life will end and you are still saving for something that will happen later. Okay, and so certainly you need to be using your money now to some extent. You need to enjoy your relationships at the moment. You certainly need to get the right balance between how much credit I'm going to claim now versus save for the future. I say this is often a philosophical argument because it's quite possible that most of us, most of the time, err on the side of being not patient enough and not too patient. And
not me. I'm great. Super patient, too patient, actually.
Yeah, well, Alison, so let me say, so I think that there is a confusion here. So many times when academics say that they have like too strong of a self-control or they are too patient.
For the record, I'm totally joking. I am extremely impulsive. Oh my gosh.
Okay, that's why Mike is laughing.
Yeah.
I didn't want to say. I was going to let Alison go.
No, I do not have too much self-control. But please keep going.
No, let's move on. I was just going to say that when people say that they have too much self-control, I am suspicious that maybe they just, this is what they want to do. Okay, they're not really It's like because we are academics, right? By the end of the day, when we need to leave our office, we stay there for more time than needed to, because we really can't think of anything better to do with our lives. I mean, it's maybe a little bit sad, or maybe it's wonderful, but it's not the result of self-control. It's the result of just thinking that this is the best thing I can do with my time right now.
Yeah.
I was talking to some developmental psychologists a little while back, and the question that we were kicking around was, so I'm sure many people know Walter Michel's marshmallow test with kids. There's a marshmallow in front of them, and if they wait for a period of time, they get two. And of course, kids can't do it. But the question was like, how long, what is the optimal amount of time? If you were watching your kid, like you definitely wouldn't want them to eat it immediately. But what if they could sit there for like an hour?
Days, and like their only means of
Wouldn't you
survival
be
is to
worried?
eat the marshmallow.
Like at what point would you think, my God, what have I done to this child? They're not going to ever eat the marshmallow. I've made them too calculating. So there's some that we were like, what's the optimal point for the kid, like for life outcomes? But we were really thinking about as a parent, when we watch other people, like some people, we just think, I wish they would go.
Oh, wait, I have a question for Ayelet that is on this theme, which is, you in the book, and even now in this session, you are remarkably agnostic about what goals people should or should not pursue. You provide so many amazing insights and frameworks about how to set goals, what the trade-offs among them might be, how to pursue them, etc. But you never come out and say, this is what a category of good goals or virtuous goals might look like, and here are things that maybe you should think twice about. Do you feel that way, or are you just showing us your self-control as a scientist and as an author and as a person, an amazing act of sort of non-judgmental ness, and not really, I mean, I think a lot of people here are probably very familiar with all the work, like all the nudge work, which almost by definition has a position on what's a good thing to achieve and what's less good to achieve. Can you say a little bit about that, Ayelet?
Well, I guess the answer is both. Okay, I think that different people have different goals, and then interesting to see how they motivate themselves. Okay, it's interesting to see how adolescents motivate themselves to engage in all kind of risky behaviors that I wouldn't advise them to do. Okay, how do they learn how to drink? Okay, which often they don't enjoy their first beer. So these are like interesting motivational questions, and I'm just curious. Then I guess where you get the lack of judgment is often in like what people find intrinsically motivating, and that literature often says that like there are things that should be intrinsically motivating. Like you should pursue growth, and you should pursue connection. And what we find is that people can be intrinsically motivated to make a lot of money, which means that when they feel that they make money as they engage in their behavior, they are excited, they want to do more of it, they will engage in it in their free time. And that's just interesting theoretically to separate the content of motivation from the structure of motivation. Like let's not define for people what their goals are. They might be good for them, bad for them. They might fit with my ideology, not fit with my ideology. We will still see the same mechanisms. But I do tell my kids what they should and should not do, if that was the question.
It's great. It's true, right? Like even the most non-judgmental and agnostic among us, who are like, we try mightily to let everybody have autonomy over what they're aiming for. At some point, you have to choose for yourself, and often for others, in a weird way. Not just children, but all, like, these little micro moments with people you mentor and colleagues and other things. It gets tricky to remain perfectly agnostic.
You alluded to this a little bit just now, Ayelet, but I think everyone, one of the papers I tell people the most about of all the papers is your paper with Caitlin Woolley on intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, incentives inside and outside a task, where the extrinsic matters more outside and the intrinsic matters more inside. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I have a feeling people on the call, including me, it's something that's so easy to forget. And and I mean simple as a huge compliment. It's such a simple, clear insight that I think is really shapes people's thinking.
Thank you. So I think you're referring to Caitlin Woolley, and I did a lot of work on intrinsic motivation. I think you're referring to the paper in which people were planning their goal pursuits based on extrinsic motivation, but how much they did it, how much they were engaged as they were pursuing the activity was based on intrinsic motivation. And if you want to replicate this effect, as I do every time I teach my MBA class, you ask people about their present job, their previous job, and their next job, how much extrinsic motivation, that is pay and perks, versus intrinsic motivation, that is doing something interesting with people that you like, matter. And people consistently say that intrinsic motivation really matters for their job right now. I mean, these are part-time students, so they have a job, but that will influence them less when they will apply to their future jobs, and they don't remember caring about it this much in the past, which is, it's a bit of the empathy gap, right? That right now I know how I feel about things, and it's impossible to do a job that's boring with people that I don't like, but next month, the Ayelet will be there. She's going to do what's important for her. And it doesn't matter whether that's enjoyable or not. So that's the mistake there.
Every time people are weighing job offers, and it's like clearly a job that fulfills them versus a job that pays like $8 more.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to go with the $8 more because it's more. You know what I mean? It's like I can write down a larger number, so it's more. And it's so hard for us to, I don't know if it's maybe because it's harder to quantify intrinsic value or something like that, but it's just so easy to underweight it. Even though obviously we know right now, as you said, it's incredibly important for our well-being. It's like tomorrow, $8 is better. So it doesn't even matter what the task is. I don't know how to get people, I mentioned your research to try to get people to think like, yeah, but what will your life be like? But it's so hard for us.
So tell them about a study in which we had people choose between listening to Hey Jude by the Beatles and a loud alarm clock. And it's a no-brainer, right? Of course you should choose the song. Like, you will suffer through the alarm. We tell you it's going to be loud. We play a sample. And the loud alarm paid 10% more. And so over 70% of the people chose it. And, of course, they regretted their choice because 10% more is really not so much money, and doing the task is awful. But this is exactly the trade-off that you're describing.
For my course on conversation, I collaborate with a professional matchmaker named Rachel Greenwald, and she said she sees this play out all the time in romantic matchmaking too, because people imagine the sort of like extrinsic rewards of different people they could be with, like who they are on paper essentially, versus what is the actual experience. It's like do you want to date someone who sounds like a loud alarm clock in the experience of it, or do you want to date someone or marry someone who's like the embodiment of Hey Jude? And yet people aren't good at thinking about, like, when you think about the people in your life, if you had to pick one of them to spend the rest of your life with, like, who makes you the happiest when you're together? Who makes you laugh the most? Who makes those sparks and pings go off in your brain? Like, who do you enjoy sitting with in silence? These are not the traits or characteristics that people are thinking of when they're thinking about the matching market of dating. And I think it's very similar sort of dysfunctional psychology.
Yeah.
My dad said when you're deciding on somebody to marry, his rule is like, you're gonna sit next to that person for thousands of hours.
Yeah.
So pick someone that you could sit next to, like independent of what you're, doesn't just, you could watch TV, whatever you're doing, talking about the kids, you're gonna have to sit with them for so long. So you
Oh my
better like
God.
sitting with them because that's gonna be pretty much your whole life from now on. I was like, oh, it's a great rule, Dad. Yeah.
Guys, I'm looking at the time and I'm realizing that
Oh.
time has flown for us. I hope it's flown for other people too. And I think that we should stop being so selfish and seek social support from the people in the crowd. And I'm wondering if Todd might facilitate some Q&A with people in the audience.
Can I ask a question that someone typed into the Q&A?
Yeah.
Which is a selfish question, which is the person wrote, Ayelet is an expert on so many different topics. I'm curious if she has any tips to graduate students on how to set goals and decide what research interests to pursue. Like more generally, how do you pick you said, like we talked about, no one studied that, which is often how we, how we decide what to work on, but how do you think about which of the, because projects take a long time and it really, it really is a commitment in a way to an idea.
Yeah, so I mean, you just, I think, highlighted the number one mistake, which is not realizing that when you say an idea is interesting, let's test it. You are committing the next 3 to 6 years of your life into this problem, right? You will sit at night writing papers on this, and so you better find the idea truly interesting and important. And I say interesting and important because you need to be excited, you need to be curious, you kind of want to know the answer. But it's also something that you need to stay interested on for like more than this month or this year. And is it sufficiently important for you to look at this problem? Like you mentioned, Mike, my paper on food allergies and how they create loneliness. When I thought about this idea originally, like that was another paper with Caitlin Woolley, I thought, oh, that's going to be cute. That's interesting. There are so many food allergies around us. And then when I had a child with gluten intolerance, which luckily went away, I said, okay, well, now I'm ready to dedicate part of my life to study that, which was a whole new level of commitment. Other than that, just work with Alison and Mike and Todd, and you'll be successful graduate students.
I think I might have stolen this from Todd, but I think it was something like every project you start at some point, you're going to be running study 7B. Yeah. So you really better like the idea. Yeah. Sorry, Todd. I think I keep jumping in here.
No, this is great. I'm gonna choose an answer that Ayelet, I think will give you a chance to go wherever in the book you want to go, and it is from Mustafa Fahim, and the question is, what is the most efficient way to cure procrastination? And so obviously there's not a single answer to that, but you could even, I really appreciated earlier your reinterpretation of what we think procrastination and self-control even is, but this will give one a softball to take us into your book, where or your body, one of the areas of the many areas of your research that led to this book. The question is, what is the most efficient way to cure procrastination?
Okay, so let's start with some self-diagnosis. Is our person truly a procrastinator? That is, they can't get out of the chair and do anything. Or is this person an overachiever? And so they already work 20 hours a day, but they wish that was 24. Okay? And I would try to do some analysis of is it really necessary to just do more? Because after all, we want to do what's important for us, not necessarily just be more active for the sake of being more active. Then I would start with what can you change about your situation? And I actually write about this in my introduction. I think that this is something that all behavioral scientists agree on, that to change behavior, we change the situation. So I'm not going to be a different person. If I am a procrastinator, then I'm not going to stop being a procrastinator, but I'm going to be in a different environment where something happens that makes me do things in a different way. And that different environment can either have an environment in which goals are set in a different way. They are intrinsic, for example, they are approach goals in which feedback and progress is monitored in a different way. We started this conversation with Alison's example of choosing tasks where you can see the progress. It could be about managing your multiple goals. Okay, so if you procrastinate on one thing, maybe this is because you're working too much on another thing. So maybe reduce that so that you can focus on what's important for you. And it could be that you're just not with the right people. Find the people that excite you to leave that chair and do something. Find a person that wants to do it with you. Connect to people. We are not on an individual journey ever, not even as academics. We are part of a network of people, and maybe are in a not the right network for the goal that you feel you're procrastinated on.
Sometimes when Todd and I go for a walk, we will have some idea, and then one of us will say like, well, that's something we're never going to work on because procrastination kicks in. It's hard to kick back out of it, I think. So I'm learning now that Todd is a bad person for me because he brings out my procrastination. Whereas when I talk about ideas with Alison, we get going and do stuff. So thank you. I can now sort my friends.
I'm Mike. What happens there is I save you from the pain of study 7B.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
It might be that study 7B with Alison is more pleasant.
No, I think I'm holding his hand into the fire of hell, and he has to come along with me.
So there are. I'll do one last question from the questions that have been entered, and then we'll let you wrap up, Ayelet, as we're approaching the end of the hour. There's a couple questions about like the business context, where obviously goals are goals, whether they are personal goals or professional goals or other goals. But from an organizational setting, do you have any thoughts or ideas or examples of ways to embed improved goal accomplishment in organizations? Because it's such a micro thing that we're talking about, and people, I mean, you teach at Booth, where I'm sure people are always asking, how do we institutionalize this?
So it's a big one, and it's a big one in particular now because most organizations are reorganize themselves around the pandemic and working from home. And if we thought that motivation is important before the pandemic, as we sent 70% of the people to work from home, it turned out that motivation matters even more because now there is no boss standing behind your desk. And it's really about whether you can get yourself to do what you need to do. And so a big question that all organizations are struggling with at the moment, and being part of a school, even how do you motivate people to study in the new world? Okay? How do you get people back to the classroom? How do you re-engage? Well, without getting too much into details, I would say again, like you should think about setting the right target, monitoring progress, see what conflicts with this, and social support. And I would focus on the last aspect. Social support is the big part of what makes it so hard to work from home or to study at home. Pursuing goals with not with the right people. Okay, now, I'm not saying that my children are not the right people for me. They're definitely the right people for family stuff. But when I was asked to be a second grade teacher, that was not very good for my job. That was just when I was trying to write a book, and that really undermined my motivation. And as an organization, you need to find a way for people to connect with the people that help their goals.
Ayelet is talking about, she actually has a child in second grade and had to oversee her child's at-home schooling like so many people did during the pandemic. So she wasn't actually asked to be a professor at Booth and a second grade teacher at the same time. But in a way, we sort of all were asked to do those. Yeah, all asked to do those things. And you're right, Ayelet, like the village of people that it takes to support any human, and this is especially kids or people at work, when that village was all of a sudden yanked away, it exposed a lot of these sort of problems that we grapple with in terms of personal motivation on our own all the time. One thing that when you were talking about how do we bring this up to the level of the organization, or how do we do this as leaders? One thing that's quite hard about motivation is so much of it is private, right? Like so much of it happens in your own head. Like what are the tricks and strategies that you're playing on yourself to get yourself to do things? And so it's almost like the answer has to lie in the observable, public, interpersonal aspects of it. And like, what can we possibly show to other people about what we're doing in our own heads to achieve things? Super fast.
A lot is in your mind, but not everything, right? You do change your environment. You do work with other people. Thank you so much for clarifying that I am not a second grade teacher. I'm a business professor. I was only struggling with teaching my child. I'm trying to make it less of you just have to try harder. It's not just about, it's actually never about you just have to try harder. It's about changing something around you, including the people around you. It can be observed. There are rules and tricks and interventions, and it's much more doable than when we say, how do I motivate myself? There are many specific things that you can do. Just see where the problem is, and we can address it.
I'm very, very grateful that all of you are in my social support network to achieve my goals, and especially Ayelet, thank you for visiting us today and for sharing this brilliant work with us. Guys, get out there and get it done so you stop forgetting, quitting, and being undone. Thank you, Ayelet, and thanks Big for having me and Mike too.
Thank you so much, Ayelet.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all so much. Yes, we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.